But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Behold my servant whom I uphold, mine elect in whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. A bruised reed shall he not break, and the smoking flax shall he not quench. He shall bring forth judgment unto truth. He shall not fail, nor be discouraged, till he have set judgment in the earth, and the isles shall wait for his law. Thus saith God the Lord, He that created the heavens and stretched them out, He that spread forth the earth, and that which cometh out of it, He that giveth breath unto the people upon it, and spirit to them that walk therein. I the Lord have called thee in righteousness.
If I am not doing the things my Father wants me to do, but if I do them, even though you do not believe me, you should at least believe my deeds, in order that you may know, once and for all, that the Father is in me, and that I am in the Father.
Blasphemy!
The terrible martyrdom of Anne Askew. Back then, the church ruled everything. They kept the Bible away from the people. Anne found a hidden Bible. As she read, truth came alive. The Spirit of God stirred her heart. She shared the word, though it was forbidden. Kings used the church to gain power. The church kept the poor in darkness. Anne spoke boldly against their lies. The king and priests saw her as a threat. They wanted to make an example of her. Her trial was only for show. Still, Anne stood strong for truth. Their hate grew fierce. They threw her into prison. She was starved, mocked, and left cold. They tortured her without mercy. Then they burned her alive. They say lightning struck as she died. Because of her and others like her, we now read the Bible freely. Anne Askew will never be forgotten.
We are come to witness the burning of these Protestant heretics who have denied the authority of the one true Catholic Church and of His Holiness the Pope. Let them burn for all eternity in the flames of hell.
Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye, when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely, for my sake. Rejoice, and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost his savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out, and to be trodden under foot of men. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on an hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works, and glorify your Father which is in heaven. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
In short, Protestant attitudes toward Catholicism have softened dramatically in recent years. Not long ago, Protestants valued the principle of sola scriptura and refused to compromise with practices they saw as unbiblical. They remembered the persecutions their forefathers endured and taught their children to beware of Rome's influence. Yet now we see prominent Protestant voices apologizing for what they call past bigotry and reaching out in friendship to Rome. The historic protests of the Reformation are fading from memory. Many speak as if the Reformation was a tragic misunderstanding that should be healed. They suggest that perhaps the old disagreements were exaggerated, and they eagerly embrace cooperation with the very power their ancestors once identified with Antichrist. In short, Protestants who once guarded religious liberty and abhorred Rome's oppression are now embracing the Catholic Church with open arms. The once protesting churches are largely protesting no more. This opens the door to dangerous compromises. But is Rome truly safe to trust? To find out, we must examine what the Roman Church says about herself and whether her fundamental claims and aims have changed. A key to understanding Rome's mindset is her claim of infallibility, the assertion that the Church and Pope cannot err in matters of faith and morals. For over 800 years, the papacy has upheld this astonishing claim. In fact, in the 19th century, Rome affirmed with even greater boldness that her doctrines have never changed and never will. As one Catholic source put it, the Church declares that it never erred, nor will it ever err, according to the Scriptures. Because of this, the papal power has never renounced the principles that guided its past actions. All the cruelties and persecutions Rome once carried out against those deemed heretics are defended as just. The Church maintains that all she did was right, and if the same circumstances were repeated, she would do the same again. Have these people forgotten the claim of infallibility put forth for 800 years by this haughty power? What does this mean practically? It means that the Roman Catholic Church as a system believes it has nothing to apologize for in its history. The horrors of the Inquisition, the burnings at the stake. According to Rome's official stance, those acts were not mistakes. The papal church will never relinquish her claim to infallibility. If given the opportunity and power, would she not repeat the same acts of repression? Indeed, history shows that whenever and wherever the Catholic Church gained unchallenged authority, it swiftly revived tyranny and persecution. Let the restraints now imposed by secular governments be removed and Rome be reinstated in her former power, and there would speedily be a revival of her tyranny and persecution. This is the logical consequence of Rome's infallibility claim. A church that asserts it cannot err can never truly change its course. It can only wait for circumstances to permit it to act freely again. Rome's claim to infallibility reveals that her basic attitude has not changed at heart. She sees nothing wrong in what she did before, and thus no reason she wouldn't do it again. So how does this mentality affect Rome's view of freedom? What does the papal hierarchy think about the liberty of conscience that Protestants once held so dear? History gives a chilling answer. One of the most precious principles of Protestantism is freedom of conscience. Wherever Catholicism was in control, dissenting faiths were outlawed and punished, just like theft or murder. In fact, every cardinal, archbishop, and bishop of the Catholic Church takes an oath of allegiance to the Pope that includes these words: heretics, schismatics, and rebels to our said Lord, the Pope, I will to my utmost persecute and oppose. Let that sink in. The highest leaders of the Roman Church swear to persecute heretics to the extent of their power. These are not just ancient sentiments. The phrase, "she is tolerant where she is helpless," has been used to describe Rome's attitude. The Catholic Church champions religious liberty when she is in the minority. But the moment she has sufficient power, that liberty is withdrawn. Bishop O'Connor once admitted, "Religious liberty is merely endured until the opposite can be carried into effect without peril to the Catholic world." This means the Church will allow freedom of religion only until she can safely abolish it. Such statements reveal a mindset fundamentally at odds with the Protestant view of soul freedom. Now, it's important to note, this does not mean that all Catholic individuals share these intolerant views. In fact, there are many sincere Christians within the Roman Catholic communion who worship God according to the best light they have. They may not have been given full access to the Scriptures or encouraged to study it deeply, so they don't discern the errors mixed into their faith. They follow God as far as they understand, wrapped up in rituals and tradition without knowing a better way. God looks with pitying tenderness upon these souls and recognizes their devotion. He will, in His time, lead many of them into a clearer knowledge of truth, and many will yet take their position with His people. Our criticism, then, is not aimed at sincere Catholic believers, but at a system that misleads them. But Romanism, as a system, the papal hierarchy and its authoritative teaching, is no more in harmony with the gospel of Christ now than in any former period in history. In spite of some surface reforms, the core doctrines and claims remain the same. The Catholic Church's stance toward freedom of conscience, in particular, is as unyielding as ever. She sees true religious liberty as error and longs for the day she can again enforce her will. Why, then, do so many Protestants no longer perceive the danger? Largely because they have been charmed by Rome's new image. The Catholic Church today presents itself as gentle, caring, and even progressive in some ways. The outward change in tone has fooled people into forgetting the inward principles. One big reason for this charm offensive is the impressive, even seductive, power of Rome's religious pomp. We must examine that next. Many assume that the Catholic faith, with its strict dogmas, would be dreary or unappealing. In reality, the opposite is often true. Roman Catholic worship is one of the most dazzling religious experiences in the world. The Church has mastered the art of appealing to the senses and emotions. Step into a grand Catholic cathedral. The high vaulted ceilings, the marble pillars and arches, the glow of stained glass saints, the rows of candles and incense smoke curling upward. All of it inspires awe. The religious service of the Roman Church is a most impressive ceremonial. At a solemn Mass, the eye is charmed by magnificent processions of robed priests carrying crosses and candles. The ear is captivated by the rich notes of the organ and the melody of a trained choir echoing through the lofty domes. This gorgeous display and solemn ritual fascinates the senses of the people and can even silence the voice of reason and conscience. There is a feeling of reverence and mystery. It's easy to see why many would be drawn in by such worship. But what lies beneath that splendid exterior? The very need for elaborate pomp can be evidence of an inward emptiness. The Bible teaches that the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. True faith does not depend on ornate decorations or theatrical ceremony. In the light shining from the cross, true Christianity appears so pure and lovely that no external decorations can enhance its true worth. The beauty God values is the beauty of holiness, a meek, humble, and loving spirit. By contrast, the Catholic system often uses outward splendor to mask a lack of genuine gospel power. People may be swept up in the emotion of ritual and neglect the simple, heart-transforming truths of Scripture. Yet, a religion of externals is naturally attractive to the unrenewed heart. Human nature tends to gravitate toward what is seen and felt, rather than purely spiritual worship. The pomp and ceremony of Catholic worship indeed have a seductive, bewitching power by which many are deceived. Surrounded by grandeur, multitudes come to look upon the Roman Church as the very gate of heaven. They say, "This church must be of God. See how majestic and beautiful her worship is." None but those who have planted their feet firmly on Bible truth, whose minds and hearts are fortified by God's Spirit, are proof against this influence. Thousands who do not have a deep, personal relationship with Christ are being led to accept the forms of godliness without its power. Such a religion, one that is visually and emotionally satisfying yet doesn't demand a changed life, is exactly what multitudes desire. It feels good and requires little inward surrender. Indeed, the Catholic Church not only captivates the senses, it also offers an easy path to soothe the conscience. It teaches that the Church can grant forgiveness of sins through rituals like confession and penance. To many, it is more pleasing to kneel before a human priest and perform a set of prayers or penances than to open the soul directly to God and truly repent. The idea that one can simply confess on Saturday and be absolved, only to repeat the sin next week, is a comforting loophole for those unwilling to forsake sin. The system of penance, doing outward acts to atone for wrongdoing, is more palatable to human nature than the Bible's call to crucify one's fleshly lusts and undergo genuine heart change. In short, Rome's religion often provides a way to feel religious without being truly converted. This too holds a seductive appeal. We see then that the Catholic Church knows how to charm the senses and cater to human inclination. It presents a faith filled with beauty, mystery, and a certain indulgence for sin, a combination that has won the hearts of millions. But behind that enchanting facade, what has the papal system done when it held real power? To truly gauge Rome's character, we must remember the story of her actions at the height of her dominance. That means looking at the cruelty and oppression that took place when the papacy ruled without check. Only then can we understand the spirit we're dealing with. The Bible tells us that God is love, 1 John 4:8. But during the long centuries of papal rule, the Roman Church's actions told a very different story. In the Middle Ages, the Church of Rome blended pagan practices with Christianity and, like paganism of old, severely misrepresented God's character. The result was a system that resorted to cruel and revolting practices in God's name. When the Catholic Church held sway over kings and nations, it did not hesitate to use torture and violence to enforce its doctrines. In those days of Rome's supremacy, there were instruments of torture specifically designed to compel assent to the Church's teachings. There was the rack, the thumbscrew, the Iron Maiden, devices that inflicted excruciating pain. Those who continued to resist were often handed over to the civil authorities to be burned alive at the stake for heresy. There were also massacres on a scale that will never be fully known until revealed in the final judgment. Under cover of holy zeal, untold thousands, perhaps millions, of faithful souls were slain for their faith. Dignitaries of the Church studied, under Satan their master, to invent means to cause the greatest possible torture and not end the life of the victim. Many martyrs experienced an infernal process, repeated to the utmost limit of human endurance, until nature gave up the struggle, and the sufferer hailed death as a sweet release. Such was the fate of those who opposed Rome's dogmas. Even Rome's own adherents were subjected to heart-sickening cruelties, though of a different kind. To secure heaven's favor, the Church taught people to practice extreme self-denial. Penitents would violate the laws of nature, whipping themselves, going without food or sleep, and performing painful acts of devotion. They were taught to break the ties of family affection and shut themselves in monasteries or convents, believing that by making life as joyless as possible, they could please God. The churchyards of Europe contain millions of victims who spent their lives trying in vain to atone for their sins through suffering. They never knew the sweet peace of forgiveness through Christ. Instead, they lived and died under a system of fear and penance. Such ruthless cruelty did not come from the God of the Bible. It was the work of Satan, carried out through the leaders of a professed Christian church. Jesus said, "The thief, Satan, cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy." John 10:10. Indeed, through the papal system, the devil achieved exactly that. He stole the purity of the gospel, killed those who opposed his counterfeit, and destroyed the joy and hope of those under Rome's bondage. By these atrocities, Satan brought dishonor to God and great wretchedness to man. People who knew nothing of the Bible saw the cruelty of Christians and came to hate or fear God, imagining him to be as cruel as the Church. In reality, God was as far as could be from those inquisitors, tribunals, and torture chambers. Christ never taught his followers to do such things. On the contrary, Jesus rebuked his disciples for wanting to use violence in God's name. When James and John suggested calling down fire on a village that rejected him, he turned and rebuked them, and said, "Ye know not what manner of spirit ye are of. For the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them." Luke 9:55-56. How utterly different from the spirit manifested by the papacy, which often destroyed those it could not subdue. The papal church claimed to act for Christ, but its deeds bore the mark of Antichrist. We have recalled the terrible cruelty of Rome in the ages of her unchecked power. History exposes the true spirit that lay beneath Rome's outward forms, a spirit wholly unlike Christ. Today, of course, the Catholic Church appears very different. Modern popes speak of peace and human rights. The Church issues apologies for past errors. But is this change genuine or just a new strategy? In the next section, we will see that despite apologetic words and a polished image, the spirit and aims of the papacy remain fundamentally unchanged. In our time, the Roman Church often presents a fair front to the world. Leaders acknowledge that wrongs were done in the past, and the Church now speaks about religious liberty, tolerance, and unity. On the surface, it appears that Rome has become almost another church, entirely from the one that conducted the Inquisition. But beneath this pleasant modern facade, has the papacy truly changed? Every evidence says no. In fact, the Catholic Church herself insists she is the same as ever. It is a matter of pride that Rome never changes. One Catholic publication triumphantly states that the principles of the Church are as immutable as truth itself. They are the same in the 19th century as they were in the 10th, and that is exactly the point. Every principle of the papacy that existed in past ages exists today. The doctrines and claims forged in the Dark Ages, papal supremacy over kings and consciences, the right to enforce doctrine by pressure, are still official teaching. They have not been repudiated. The Catholic Catechism, councils, and canon law continue to uphold the same claims. The papacy that Protestants now politely call a sister church is the very same power that ruled the world in the days of the Reformation. Today's Pope wields the same titles, Vicar of Christ, Holy Father, and claims the same authority to speak for God on earth. The Roman Church still asserts the right to decide what is true doctrine for everyone. She still claims infallibility and the prerogative to judge and correct all other churches. The papacy's spirit is also unchanged. She has clothed herself in Christ-like garments, but she is unchanged. Pride still characterizes her official attitude. Pride in being the one true church, above all others. The Catholic Church continues to teach that there is no salvation outside of her. She also maintains an arrogant assumption of power. During the Middle Ages, popes deposed kings and emperors, and today the Church still believes in principle that spiritual power has the right to control temporal power. As one past pope declared, it is lawful for the Church to depose emperors and absolve subjects from their allegiance to any ruler who defies the pope. If the Catholic Church were suddenly granted the kind of dominance she once had, she would put these principles in practice with as much vigor now as in past centuries. We delude ourselves if we think otherwise. Rome's whole history, and her own claims, testify that she does not truly believe in equality or pluralism. She believes she should rule for the good of mankind. Bible prophecy foresaw this very situation. Long ago, the Apostle Paul wrote that a great falling away or apostasy would occur, and a man of sin would arise who opposed God and exalted himself. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4. The papacy perfectly fulfills this prophecy, an apostate power blending religion and self-exaltation. Paul said this power would continue until the second coming of Christ. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-8. The book of Revelation likewise pictures a beast power that recovers from a deadly wound and whose deadly wound is healed, continuing until all the world wonders after it. Revelation 13:3. So Scripture tells us the papacy will endure till the end, fundamentally the same even if its tactics change. It is a part of her policy to assume the character which will best accomplish her purpose. But beneath the variable appearance of the chameleon, she conceals the invariable venom of the serpent. Rome can appear democratic, friendly, or progressive when it serves her, but this is just an outer disguise. Underneath, the same goals and the same antagonism to true freedom remain. For example, the Church still holds to the dictum that faith ought not to be kept with heretics. In other words, Rome asserts she is not bound to honor promises to those she considers enemies of the Church. This shocking principle was used to justify breaking treaties and betraying dissenters in ages past, and it remains on the books today. Shall a power with such a record and such principles now be welcomed and embraced as a part of the Church of Christ? Many Protestants have essentially answered yes. They argue that Catholicism today is very different from the Catholicism of the Middle Ages. They think the Reformation divide is largely healed and that we can all unite as Christians. It is true that outwardly Catholicism appears more mellow. But as we've seen, there's been no change in the papacy itself. If anything, the change has been in the attitude of Protestantism. Indeed, Catholicism seems to resemble modern Protestantism more than in former times, because Protestantism has greatly degenerated since the days of the Reformers. While Rome stands firmly by her age-old claims, only phrasing them sweetly for now, many Protestant churches have abandoned the steadfast faith of their founders. As the Protestant churches have sought the favor of the world and secular acceptance, false charity has blinded their eyes. They don't see evil in anything anymore. They think it is right to believe good of all evil, meaning they insist on seeing the Catholic Church in the best possible light, regardless of history or prophecy. And as a result, many of these churches are now apologizing to Rome for their past bigotry. They are figuratively begging pardon for ever opposing her. In doing so, they fulfill another warning. They are now, as it were, apologizing to Rome for their uncharitable opinion of her, begging pardon for their bigotry. This false charity, calling evil good, will eventually lead them to call good evil. Those few who still stand firmly for biblical truth will be seen as divisive or intolerant, while the corrupt power of Rome is embraced as a force for good. We discover a tragic irony. The papacy is unchanged, but Protestants have changed drastically. They have let go of the clear, uncompromising faith of the Reformers and are stretching hands across the gulf to clasp Rome's hand. What will be the consequence of this compromise? Already, Protestant churches are imitating and supporting Rome in various ways. They are accepting traditions above Scripture and leaning on state power to enforce moral codes. As Protestants and Catholics find common ground, a particular issue is emerging as central: the question of worshiping on Sunday versus the biblical Sabbath. To understand the coming crisis, we must examine the history of the Sunday question, for it lies at the heart of what's soon to come. The drift of Protestants into compromise with Rome didn't happen overnight. It came gradually, through a series of concessions. For years, many Protestant denominations have been tampering with and patronizing popery. They have made concessions that even Catholics are surprised to see. Step by step, many have softened their stance on doctrines where they once differed from Rome. In some cases, Protestants now apologize for the zeal of the Reformers, calling it intolerance. They are willing to minimize differences as mere misunderstandings. A large class of Protestants, even those who still hold no personal favor for Romanism, see little danger in its growing influence. They argue that times have changed. The ignorance and superstition of the Dark Ages are gone, and with modern enlightenment, they believe intolerance and tyranny could never return. The very suggestion that something like the Inquisition could happen in our enlightened age is ridiculed as paranoia. After all, we live in an era of constitutions and human rights. Such Protestants say it's bigoted or childish to fear Catholicism in the 21st century. It's true that great light, intellectual, moral, and spiritual, shines on our generation. But the sad fact is, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow for those who turn away from it. Many Protestants today pride themselves on their enlightenment, yet they neglect the Scriptures and underestimate the papacy's persistence. They have not prayerfully studied Bible prophecy to show them the real character of the papacy. If they did, they would abhor and shun its influence. Instead, they lean on their own wisdom. Feeling wise and secure, they do not humbly seek God for guidance into truth. Although priding themselves on their enlightenment, they are ignorant both of the Scriptures and of the power of God. They must have some way to quiet their consciences, and they naturally prefer a path that is least spiritual and least humbling. So what do? They seek a religion that will soothe their minds without requiring the difficult work of self-surrender to God. As the old description goes, what they desire is a method of forgetting God which shall pass as a method of remembering Him. In other words, they want the form of religion without the power of true godliness, 2 Timothy 3:5. And the papacy is perfectly designed to meet this desire. The Catholic system can accommodate those who want to earn salvation by their works and those who want to continue in sin while still being promised salvation. It is prepared for two classes of mankind, embracing nearly the whole world, those who would be saved by their merits and those who would be saved in their sins. For the first class, Rome offers endless ceremonies, rituals, penances, and good deeds to perform, appealing to people who think they can gain heaven by their own effort. For the second class, Rome offers indulgences, easy absolution through confession, and traditions that lessen the sense of the seriousness of sin, appealing to people who want the hope of heaven without forsaking their vices. Here is the secret of its power. By providing something for everyone, an easy religion, the papacy extends its net over nearly the whole world. This is exactly what is happening with Protestants. Having lost the spirit and power of true godliness, they reach for the outward forms and comfortable doctrines that Catholicism provides. In fulfilling immediate desires, unity, beautiful worship, moral order, they forget the underlying compromise being made. In summary, Protestant compromise with Rome is nearly complete. Many Protestant churches have exchanged the solid truths of God's Word for a superficial unity and a form of religion that pleases the crowds. Enlightenment and knowledge have not saved them from deception, because they have not loved the truth enough to defend it. What will be the outcome of these compromises? The Bible and history together point to a revival of Rome's influence and the repetition of past conflicts. One major focal point will be the Sabbath question, the issue of the seventh-day Sabbath versus Sunday observance. The church even produced a forged letter it said was from God. This letter, supposedly fallen from heaven onto an altar in Jerusalem, commanded everyone to observe Sunday from the 9th hour, 3 p.m., on Saturday until sunrise Monday, and threatened plagues and disasters on those who disobeyed. In truth, this document was concocted in the Pope's palace, but it was eagerly used by clergy to enforce Sunday holiness. By fraud and fear, Sunday observance was increasingly entrenched in Christian practice. Throughout these centuries, however, there were always those who remained faithful to God's true Sabbath, the seventh day. They often had to practice in secret or face severe consequences. The history of Sabbath keepers is written in blood. Consider the Waldenses, a people in the Alps who clung to the Bible alone as their rule. Some among them kept the seventh-day Sabbath. Rome's response was a long and bloody persecution to exterminate these heretics. Thousands of Waldenses were hunted and killed in their mountain hideouts for obeying God's commandments. The churches of Ethiopia and Abyssinia kept the Sabbath on Saturday for many centuries, isolated from the rest of Christendom. When Rome eventually learned of their existence, Jesuit emissaries swarmed in and persuaded the Ethiopian emperor to submit to the Pope. Soon an edict was issued forbidding Sabbath observance on pain of death or severe punishment. The simple Christians of Ethiopia who had never known the papacy's yoke suddenly found themselves forced to honor Sunday. The papal representatives banned their true day of worship and imposed Sunday in its place. After some years of oppression, the Ethiopians revolted against Rome's tyranny. They expelled the papal priests and restored the Sabbath in their land, having learned through bitter experience the fanaticism and despotism of Rome. The Roman Church succeeded in exalting Sunday, a day of human invention, and trampling upon the Sabbath of the Lord.